A young boy being lay dreaming, and in the dream,
I wrote this video while I was on the plane to New Orleans to stay for like 3 days. I went to New Orleans mostly because my friend invited me, but also because I've been feeling kind of weird lately. I wanted to feel something fresh and exciting, or at least normal. I've been worrying a lot about the future and the world and how everything's going to play out and what my part in that will be. I thought maybe going out to New Orleans would bring me back to earth a little bit and help me have a good time. For the last 6 months, I felt like the future is less certain than it used to be, as if a lot of the different systems that keep the world moving are suddenly way less stable, or at least I'm just now finding out they were never that stable to begin with. There's just not that much good news going around right now. A few days ago, I was listening to a geopolitical podcast, and they were just handing out reason after reason after reason to be afraid of the future. There was a dude from Harvard just sitting behind the mic telling us we're doomed in every way he could possibly think of. You hear about China planning to invade Taiwan, Egypt going to war with Ethiopia over water, Russia is lining up troops on the Ukrainian border, the US tensions with Russia and China. We're talking about all-out war between major world powers for the first time in 80 years. I can't even imagine that. There are thousands of citizens getting massacred in Myanmar for supporting democracy. The president of Chad was killed 3 days after getting re-elected and his son wants to steal his office. The list just goes on and on. A lot of it doesn't sound real, and I can't help but wonder how this rapidly destabilizing world will affect my future. The world systems are breaking apart, especially in the US. We're deeply divided and there are millions of people struggling to get by while we argue about truth and facts. With all the different challenges facing my generation, will we be able to live normal lives? What will success look like for us? I don't think it's going to look like what it did for our parents or grandparents. Will the majority of Gen Z be able to own their own homes, or will it be too expensive? Will we have healthcare without crushing debt? I think a lot about the future for Gen Z because it just seems completely uncertain and I have no clue what to expect. We all know the problem with boomers is that their lives were way too easy. They could turn on autopilot and live like kings in a way that no one ever had before in the history of humanity. That's why we don't get along with them. Nobody told them how to deal with an unstable world, a world where you actually had to consider things outside of yourself. They literally designed their environment to be soft, safe, and blind. That's what suburbs are. They're a place where you can go to defeat reality and never have to see anything you don't want to see. But that's the thing. The stuff we're seeing right now, the difficulties people are facing around the world and around the country, the unstable governments and failing systems, this is the way it's actually always been. This isn't collapse, this is a return to the way things always were. There's hyper-advanced sci-fi technology enabling engineering, communications, and medical advances we never could have imagined 50 years ago. There's poverty, murder, disease, starvation, and political corruption we hoped would never return. And it's getting much, much harder to escape one side and join the other. In 5 years, self-driving taxis and delivery drones will roam the streets while homeless people camp out under highways because they have nowhere to live. There's a writer I like called Alex Koschuta. This is what she wrote in an article called The Meritocracy to Feudalism Pipeline, talking about how wealth, power, and resources are becoming increasingly concentrated in the hands of an elite class of tech workers, engineers, and other high-paid professionals. The problems at the top may be that you are almost invariably overworked, probably stuck in some Baroque managerial hierarchy with much less leverage than you bargained for, no time for kids, or some variation on the golden handcuffs dilemma. At the bottom, the problems become more existential. Entire towns, regions, and countries become hollowed out. There's nothing to do and nowhere to go. The left is deluded in thinking that the equality of outcome is impeded only by oppression. The right is deluded in thinking that everyone has the same capacity for personal responsibility and that it does when it says on the tin when applied in a context with increasingly fewer options. Centralizing status and consolidating hierarchies has created new opportunities for some, but much fewer options for most people who can't even dream of getting on that ladder in the first place. These people have seen their communities be wiped out to make space for the options of the few, with the additional framing that any opposition to their new world is reactionary and voting against their own interests. I believe we've arrived at this point because we pay lip service to an idea of equality in a world emptied of dignity for those who, despite our best protestations, turn out to be stubbornly unequal. Equality before God was a bulwark against this, but we've dispensed with this, replacing it with a secular, see-through house of cards constructs like human rights. The global meritocratic ladder may be a dream for a handful of individuals, but it is a nightmare for many collectives. I wish I wrote that. At this point in my trip to New Orleans, I really didn't feel any better than before. Honestly, I felt a little worse than when I got here. Probably because it rained most of the time I was here, but also because I felt like the anxieties I had when I came here got a little worse. Walking down a mostly empty, dingy street in the most touristy neighborhood in America, and there are hungry, homeless beggars everywhere, just hoping for a couple bucks or some food to make it through the night. How can you enjoy the best time of your life when that's happening right next to you? How can you drink and eat when the streets are full of people that are suffering right next to you? I don't know, but I still had a couple drinks anyway. You know, we're humans. We keep going. It's what we do. We want to give a shit, but we really don't. But I think that's just part of growing up, no matter who you are. At the end of the day, I know one thing. Beyond all the unanswered questions, beyond all the fears and worries for the world, I'm just a person living my life. And I may not be where I want to be, but thank God I'm not where I was. Because life is long, and this is just one small part of it. For Gen Z, this is one of the first parts of our lives, and we have so much left to do. I guess the question now is pretty much the same one I had at the start. How should we live our lives as they are now? I don't know the answer, but I'm gonna try to figure it out.
Few people cried. Most people were silent. I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture.
So I got back from New Orleans about a week ago. And I think at the end of the day, a lot of these feelings I talked about in this video are because of the isolation and doom brought on by the global pandemic. Life was put on pause, and a lot of people just didn't have the opportunity to continue growing. And for me, what I focused on was all the things that were going wrong. And I do think things will get better as the lockdowns go away. But at the same time as I was writing and editing this video, war broke out in Israel between Hamas and the Israeli government. There was that random gas shortage that no one was even sure if it was real or not to mention all of the news about these crazy UFO videos being completely real, but we have no idea what's behind them. Life is getting crazier every single day. And I think for me, the scary part is that the government doesn't really care if they represent us at all. Joe Biden literally ran on the platform of canceling student debt, and he just silently got rid of that entirely. So even though I do feel a little better right now, at the end of the day, I think my fears are still valid. Nothing really makes sense anymore, let alone the idea that life will be easy or straightforward for most of Gen Z. But even then, there may be a silver lining. By facing so many tough choices at a young age, we may be able to learn lessons and figure things out in a way that the people before us never could have. Maybe that sounds anticlimactic. I don't know. I'm not looking at life from a bird's eye point of view. I'm in the middle of it, just like everyone else, trying to make sense of a world that's changing drastically every single day. This has been Philip. Thank you for watching.
Trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him, takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds."